Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we have the big final push on the Alfarrari for its engineering inspection. All right, guys, welcome back to Home Built, and those who have watched in the past will know that this is the Alfarrari. It's my 1973 Alfa Romeo 2000 GTV that I've put a 2000 model Ferrari 360 engine into. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can see the last video where I was working on this car. And like always, do the things like and comment and all that sort of stuff. It really helps out that mysterious algorithm. So, where we left off last time, I was tearing my hair out with the gauges, and I did mention that I would potentially look at putting a screen in. And when I said put a screen in, I didn't mean remove the dash and just stick a big rectangular screen in there. It would actually be behind the cluster and with sort of custom made so that it looks still like the gauges, something like what the brand new 992 911's got with a completely digital gauge. But I really don't want to do that, and it was more just expressing my frustration with everything else. Raceworks are working on a speedo and tacho, but they're not ready yet, so I think I'll just persevere with what I've got for the time being until they've got that, and then they'll match with all the other gauges. There were lots of suggestions about just changing the faces or making different backlit gauges faces for the other dials, and the issue with that is that they never match. Getting all of the backlighting, all of it to all look the same, so it's all cohesive, is extremely difficult. There are lots of different ways to do it, but really you need to get all the gauges from one source. There were lots of people who are suggesting some of these sort of very expensive custom gauge places, but I've always been someone who wants to do something as much myself as I can rather than just throw money at the problem. But that is always an option for any of you who are looking at doing these things. And even if you do throw money at some of these big custom gauge places, I listen to the HP Academy podcast, and I know Project Binky has been having the exact same issue of just trying to get gauges. Even with very expensive custom-made gauges, they still didn't all match properly, and they weren't happy with them. So there's still stuff to do, but for the time being, I'll leave it as it is. So that brings me to this week. I've made myself a list of things I need to do to get ready for my engineering inspection at the end of the week. I have to sort out the brakes, I have wheel alignment, I need to put on the wipers, demister vents, and a few little bits and pieces. I'll take you through it, but let's work through these things one by one and knock them off the list. All right, so the first thing I want to do before I start taking the car out and doing the brake tests and all that sort of stuff, which have to be at speed, I want to get a very rough wheel alignment done. And I thought instead of making something, I just went and bought some of these very cheap toe adjusting set. So basically what this does is it's got a couple of standoffs on the back, and you line them up with the rim itself of the wheel, not the tyre, because the tyre can have some variables in it, so it's always better to go off of the wheel itself than the tyre. Set these up either side, comes with a couple of tape measures, and by just running them either side, you can see here by measuring either side, I'm 1708 on the front and 1740 on the rear. So I have quite a lot of toe in at the moment. All right, with a little bit of resting under the car. So I've got about 1 millimeter of toe in, which is the recommended toe that I've managed to look up for a Alfa 105. All right, that's another thing marked off the list. When I drove the car at the Canberra Festival Speed, I did notice that it was really soft and sort of bounced too much and stuff like that. And I went around and checked the suspension, and I had never adjusted it, so they were all on the max soft setting. So I've put them midway now, and hopefully that should be a much better shock setting. So that's another thing marked off the list. Let's keep moving forward. All right, so I added a hose over the top of the brake line where it goes over the suspension mount, just so that it won't wear and move like that. I'm happy with that. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I need to set up a mount for my phone. Now, it might sound sort of frivolous, but it's the main way that I control my music and GPS and all those sort of things when I'm in the car. I have it in all of my old cars, and I like a wireless charging mount, so I'm planning on mounting my phone right about there. So now I need to make a bit of a CAD template and see if I can actually make up a nice mount that fits in and doesn't look too out of place. All right, so before I put the dash in permanently, or at least for the time being, I'm still, like I mentioned, not happy with how it's currently working, but we'll leave that for the time being. One of the things I need to fix is the warning lights. So I've got lights for the indicators for high beam, low beam, and the alternator I think I'll leave. It's currently working, and it needs a certain draw, so I don't know whether LEDs are going to work for that, whether they'll actually draw enough. So I'll leave the alternator as a regular globe. But basically in the back, they have these little fittings that you undo, and it has a little globe in it. I went and ordered a bunch of these little LED globes. Now, the only issue I found is that regular globes, it doesn't matter which way you put them around. With these globes, they are polarity sensitive, so I need to double check which way the polarity is on the globe and then make sure I put it in the right way around. So it's a little bit tedious, but we will update these, so then we've got nice bright warning lights on the dash. All right, so we have the dash installed. My phone mount works nicely, sits there, and yeah, that all works beautifully, and everything is roughly running at this stage. So I turn the ignition on. We have our lights now. After wiring it up, for some reason, yeah, we get a faint glow from there, but we've got all the illuminated dash lights. And when I turn the headlights on, the dash lights dim and the interior lights turn on. So if I turn them back off again, you can see the all of the warning lights turn on nicely there. So that's quite a nice touch. I also managed to get my tacho working again. There were some broken connections on the back of it, so I didn't fry it like I thought, which is all good. So we are, dash-wise, ready to roll. All right, so I've been sitting in the car for a while now and just playing around with acceleration enrichment and things like that. It has been a little temperamental, particularly I think the cold weather. It was tuned in the summer, now it's cold, so I've had to go in and do a lot of stuff for the cold correction for the acceleration enrichment and also the cold start and things like that. I'm also looking at the tune, if I can get that to focus there. We need lambda at 1. It's pretty much at 1. It's a little bit high at the moment. But yeah, basically what I'm doing is trying to get the car to sit at perfectly at lambda at 1000 RPM and at 2500 RPM, because that is where the checks are for the fueling, and the lambda needs to be sitting really nicely at 1. All right, let's get the car out now. Just go and take it for a quick little test just to see how the brakes are working. Make sure everything is ready to go for the inspection on Friday. What is that? Something is making a lot of noise in the back underneath. All right, test run shows that we still have work to do. It's making some horrible clunking noise out the back, so I've got to check, get it up in the air, see what's not connected properly or not bolted up properly in the back. Feels like something's loose, so we've got to get that up in the air. Brakes are still spongy. I've got to go around and bleed them again. I'm not happy with the pedal. Yeah, so just a couple of bits and pieces. It's starting to run better. The steering is much better, but much heavier now. But I don't have the power steering connected up yet. It's in there, but I have to just go through the wiring again. There's another time sitting down and nutting out the wiring for wiring it up. And yeah, so I've got to get the power steering working. I've got to get the suspension at the back, or the diff or something is clunking and making horrible noise. So let's get up in the air and have another look. It's, that's what it is. The center bearing is loose. And the noise I was hearing, that is completely loose. So yeah. Let's do that up, and we might not have as much rattling going on. All right, so I still have a slightly spongy brake pedal, but I can see by getting under the car, you can see that the rear master cylinder is a rock, and the front has given it, which means there's air in the front system, so at least I can narrow that part down. So let's remove the front wheels and re-bleed the brakes again and see if we can get this nice hard pedal. I've been around multiple times, all the way around, bled heaps of fluid through the system, and there's not any bubbles coming through, and it's still a soft pedal, and it's driving me crazy. There's obviously some air trapped in the system somehow. I don't know how. All right, I've been having an absolute nightmare getting these front brakes to bleed. Now, I've gone through everything. I've done it multiple times, and there's no air coming through the system, and I've still got a spongy pedal. And I've had this once before. Those of you who are avid watchers of the channel will have seen that I had a nightmare with the brakes on Harry. And what I didn't realise on Harry was, or I'd forgotten, was that there was a bleeder on the inside and outside of the calipers. Now, there is also a bleeder on the inside and outside of these calipers. I knew that, and I've been bleeding them, and there's still an issue. And it's a really simple system. They're manual brakes, there's no booster, there's no ABS or any of these other weird things, but there's obviously air in the system. And that's why sleeping on it at night works well. And last night I actually realized where I think my problem is. And my problem, I believe, is actually here. So this is my brake pressure switch. And what I'm thinking is happening is because this is facing up, there is in this little tiny section here, there's a little air pocket in there, and it's never going to bleed because there's no way for it to come out. So I need to get this off, and I need to actually be able to somehow flip it up another direction so that the top is facing down and the air can bleed out, and I won't have these issues any longer. The only trouble I have is that it's very tight in here, and I need to try and make it fit somehow. I always dread playing around with brakes, but thankfully the brake flaring tool that Raceworks have got is such a good tool. It makes life so easy, and it makes really nice flares. You can see here there's a nice sort of conical flare there, and a nice bubble flare on that end. All right, so I flipped my brake pressure sensor up the other way and tucked all the lines away. They're all hidden in there. And hopefully now there will no longer be air pockets and I'll be able to bleed my brakes. I really hate bleeding brakes. I always seem to have issues, and this is no different. I am tearing my hair out. I've spent a whole day now changing over those brake lines and trying to bleed the brakes, and I've done a whole bunch of things. Let me take you through now what's happening, but the pedal is still not any better. So this system is relatively simple. Now ignore all of the dripping brake fluid. That's just from me bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and rebleeding and leaking. And basically, I've swapped the master cylinders over, so this is now the rear and this is now the front. It was the other way around before, and we still have a soft front brake line. So I've taken the master cylinder out of the equation because now it's bled beautifully on the rear, and the system is very simple. There's one line, it comes around, it comes up here and goes up to my brake pressure switch, and then it just splits off. It comes in the top, it splits off and goes either way to the front two calipers. That's it. So it's a very simple system, and it shouldn't be that difficult to bleed. The fact that it's still soft tells me that there is still air in the system. The only place I can think that there would be air would be in this, this system here. It's the only place that is still giving me an issue. I'm going to try and remove this, sit it as vertical as possible, knock it and see if I can knock any air loose. I don't know, it is driving me crazy, but that's all that it could be. That's the only thing in the system where it could potentially have trapped air that I can think of anyway. Try bleeding it again. I'm still not happy with the pedal feel, but I'm just going to go and take it out now. Just give it a test, see what it's like, see if that's going to work. I'm running out of time to get it ready for this inspection. Yeah, I'm tearing my hair out.
Cold start's good.
All right, I don't know what happened, but as soon as I got out there and actually got on the pedal a couple of times, I have brake pedal. The brakes feel great, except it is locking the rears. So I need to get in and I need to adjust my brake bias, but I have that adjustable brake bias bar. So let's adjust the brake bias and see if we can get more to the front, because we do not want the rear locking up first. All right, so I've adjusted my balance bar all the way over, so it's using the primarily on the rear brake. So basically how this works is it's got a thread and a pivot in the middle, and the pivot sits somewhere inside this tube. The more this way it goes, the more it pushes on this master cylinder, and the more that way, the more on the rear. So hopefully we get some more front brake. So I have the rear brakes that are locking up first, and I want to try and sort this out. So I had a bit of a look, and my very loose understanding of master cylinder sizing, I need to do an explanation about the brake master cylinders sizing. So it's slightly complicated, and bear with me, but there's some maths involved.
All right, well, this is my brake system. So I've got a large bore master cylinder and a smaller bore master cylinder with the pistons on this end. And this is my brake balance bar. So my foot is going to press onto the balance bar, and it's going to be giving equal force, if it's in the center anyway, onto each piston. Now, the pressure in the brake line, at first I thought it would be the larger piston would push more fluid through and would be more pressure in the line. It will push more fluid through for the same distance traveled, but the pressure is the force enacted divided by the area of the piston. Because it's a larger area, it actually gives less pressure in the line than the small piston does. The small piston, for the same amount of force, is much easier to push, but it gives much higher pressure at the output. So in this case, because the force is equal, because the balance bar over here will actually balance out the force of my foot to both pistons, the large cylinder won't move very far, the small one will move a lot further and will actually give more pressure out of the lines. So for my case, where I want more braking pressure at the front, I want a small piston at the front and a large cylinder at the back. Hope that makes some form of sense.
So I'm going to put a larger cylinder on the rear and see if that will fix our problem. I've got, they're not the ideal sizes. I'll probably have to change the sizing later, but I've got 0.75 inch master cylinders on there at the moment, and this is a 0.875. So I'm going to put the 0.875 on the rear and hope that fixes our problem, but let's see. All right, I've spent the last couple of hours changing that master cylinder over. It's a real pain. It's difficult to get into and everything's uncomfortable, but I now have the bigger master cylinder on the rear. Let's hope that it'll actually work and give me some brake balance and the brakes work and stuff. I don't know, but this is the last ditch effort. Otherwise, it's not going to be done this time because it's the brake testing is not going to pass. All right, so with the brake bias set up, I finally have brakes that are braking in a straight line with the front first, then the rear. I can feel it's more front bias, which is what we want. We're getting there. I think it's actually ready enough to get checked. Last thing I've got to do is just put on some windscreen wipers. All right, we now have wipers. I know lots of people keep asking in the comments for ages, but I've just never got around to putting them on. That was sort of a low priority. I think we're all done. And hopefully that's ready for the inspection. Now, I'm not happy with the tune. I'll have to let you know what happens and how it goes, but I am definitely out of time. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 2019 Ferrari released the Roma. This is based on the Ferrari Portofino platform. It's a front mid-engine rear wheel drive 2+2. It uses the F154, which is a 3.9 litre twin turbo V8 making 612 horsepower. It is mated to Ferrari's new 8-speed dual clutch gearbox and has a 50-50 weight distribution. The Roma weighs around 200 kilos less than the Portofino that it is based on, with Ferrari claiming that it has around 70% new parts. And then in March of 2023, Ferrari released the Roma Spider. a soft top convertible version.
I had so much time this week put aside to do a little bit on the Alfa, just get it ready, and then do all these other projects that I have in the wings. I'm like, oh yes, I've got a spare week to get lots done, and
It's just best laid plans, really, isn't it?
I was stressing out on the Alfa all week, and in the end, the engineer has run out of time and is not actually going to be here this week anyway. So we will still wait on the outcome of that, but I've still got some tuning to do. At least I've got the brakes sorted. They're actually working now. It is mostly there. The lights work. It has wipers now. I know a lot of people seem to be really upset about the fact they didn't have wipers and other bits and pieces. So hopefully you enjoyed this week anyway.
Indeed. Yes, and hopefully, did you get a little bit ahead of things with expecting the engineer not coming, so you got more done than you thought maybe, or not really?
I was chasing my tail. I thought I just needed to bleed the brakes and I'd be done, and that ended up being a whole palaver. But now we actually have brakes that work and lock up the fronts first, and don't just sort of lock up the rear and have me sort of skidding sideways down the road. It's
I feel that's something we always want to have in a car.
yeah. So it's looking much better. So
Okay, well, just as always, if you're enjoying the videos, let Jeff know, subscribe if you haven't, and of course Patreon if you want to help him out, and see the videos a day early with no ads. Woo!
all right, guys.
So
See ya.
guys, in 2019, Ferrari released the Roma, based on the... In 2019, Ferrari released the Roma, based on the Ferrari Portofino platform. V8 new. It is mated to Ferrari's new wheel